Let's get started. Roll call, I guess we know everybody except those two gentlemen, I don't know.
Marty D. Fleece, where I guess the first case or.
Okay,
169 Benham.
oh, Bill, you're the applicant, I know that, now you know what,
I live there.
oh,
Just.
okay.
Is the roll call with the main meeting?
Roll call, yeah, who's here?
So who's not, everybody's here except for
Richard
Mears and the other person who's not. There was no, Scott, wait.
He's gone. He's no longer.
He's the one you don't want about,
He's on.
Yeah, he's.
He moved out of the city.
Alright, so this is
We have the.
so Mears was
What it is, the. Come on, man. Well, since you and I are the only commissioners here from the last meeting, can you make a motion to approve the minutes?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
And I'll second this. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. New business, you're up. Mr. Woods?
Well, I don't know if you guys got
Just for the purpose of where.
They don't have a copy.
We approved the minutes.
They don't have a copy.
No, they do.
Where are
Oh,
they?
okay.
In the back or?
Yes.
Well, here's a copy, it was in the PDF that you got sent by that, by Danny. When you opened that from last time?
Yeah, that's what I'm really. Oh, they're right here. Sorry about that.
Okay, so basically like.
You can come up to, you can, yeah, put the black chair, I'll give you this chair.
Alright.
We'll see if you can say your name.
Okay,
Get in the bed.
just like the uniform.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the one that's wired.
My name's Bill Wood, I live at 161 Farm Road,
And he's not nervous at all.
and I'm not nervous at all, but I think. Just like the request states, I wanna have permission to clear up the invasive species, the dead trees, the knotwood. And basically just clean up those trees overhanging electric boat parking lot that. Will come down at any windstorm. The microburst of 2017. Did a lot of damage back there. There's a lot of damaged trees. In fact, you're all invited to come back on the site tour anytime you'd like and see it. There's also. I had a wetland survey done by a soil scientist. And she determined that it's, just like it says, wet due to like runoff and drainage from the parking lot. And actually, her soil samples actually moved the wetland area. Because my neighbor dumped sod and brush and all kinds of stuff. On what was the original Groton GPS wetland site. So it got filled in on part of the original wetland site. So she actually moved what she called wet. From what you guys had.
Well, so one of the questions I had,
Mhm.
in looking at your map.
Mhm.
First and foremost. Guess I'll plead guilty, but. Nobody knows the facts or the investigation was done that identified. That area as a GPS wetlands to begin with.
I was surprised myself.
Okay, so. And I was here when we paid someone to go do that map, but we never noticed that thing on it, so. Did the person you have, you say she moved it?
Well, yeah,
Let me just, you say she moved it, and I saw it on your map where it moved further south.
right, yes, and.
But is that a confirmation from her that the area that we were marking is not a wetland? That's.
So, I mean, that's the way I read it, because she actually. Mapped what she thought was wet, and she actually did say it's wet due to the runoff the slope of the property and the parking lot, there's a drain in the parking lot. So, yeah, I mean, it looks like. Whatever she's calling wet, she had a bunch of scientific terms that I don't understand as far as.
Yeah, descriptions of the soil, what is used to define wetlands,
Right,
it
right.
doesn't have to be water.
Oh, okay.
Right, so, yeah, so apparently it did shift from the map that you gave me,
The G.
compared to what he did. Because
Who did this map?
I did, we did,
Like,
Marty and I, so.
what you have to do
Not-
before you answer,
Marty,
you gotta look at the map.
he showed me this,
Yeah. So that you had the property surveyed, right?
yeah, so I have copies
They
of
did
it,
this, they did this map, the surveyor.
Question I have on the map. More than I just tell.
yeah,
It's, I guess I'm gonna need some affirmation as to whether the person you had look at it, is she deeming that that area that is the green trapezoid
no, the
is
real
no longer-
trapezoid
is not a wetland?
right, that's what she's deeming, because if you look at her map. The blue circle on her map is actually the approximate blue circle on my map. And so, yeah, the way I read it, it actually looks like it did shift south. Based on the landfill. And the red circles,
Or was it just buried?
absolutely, yeah, it was just very, but I mean, she went with her soil.
Sampling.
Yeah, soil sampling, and there's so much sun and brush back there that, absolutely, you're right, it probably is buried, but. The depth that she went, she didn't find any wet soil in that area.
Where's her map?
Where's her map? I don't.
Oh, right here, so it's, I don't know if you guys got a copy of this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah, so it's,
there's a photograph.
yeah,
I don't see anything on that. Oh, wait a minute, wait, I got it,
yeah. Yeah, for her turquoise soil, we just kind of reduplicated on our map.
Okay,
Um,
all right, so we're gonna have to have a little internal discussion, but.
yeah,
Being is if she did review the whole area and that's what she says is where the soil is she found, then that should be the wetlands.
right. We can reach out, reach out to her and get her to send an email.
Does that become like now, like the survey become the official wetlands for that area now?
Hmm,
Because we
Yeah.
had the survey. Okay.
Yep.
so now the other thing is. It took her 2 weeks to get me this, my contractor actually had to call her. And I called her to pay her the final money. And she didn't bill my credit card or return my call yet, so good luck if you guys can get a hold of her.
I know, but I did reach out to their office the end of last week, Wednesday.
Mhm.
And was looking to just speak with her to ask her some questions so I could understand the report. She wasn't in, but returned the call and said she was available to speak on Friday, but unfortunately I wasn't in work on Friday, I had the day off. So I can try to reach out to her.
Okay, great, thank you, and yeah, you know, actually, I still like to pay her, I mean, I work money, you know.
You should be reaching out to you.
Right, you were thinking my door.
So I'm sorry for interrupting, but that was my question on that. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, that's the way I understand it, is that she moved it, and, you know. And some of my pictures, if you actually can see how badly damaged the trees are. Like, it becomes a safety issue, and what the contractor suggested was, just like it says, putting the small river stone loosely laid, just so I can get back there and maintain it and keep it down, but the water can still drain through and we won't be damaging any roots or stumps or anything like that.
Will there be any excavation of soil?
No. Well, the sod, possibly, that the neighbor placed on my property.
Okay,
So those red piles, you will be moving those.
Yes, either moving them or leveling them out, and there's pictures of those piles on. Page 4 of my presentation. And I have a tape measure down, so you can't see the tape measure. You can
That's
see-
it right here.
Yes, and you can kind of
There's
see,
a lot of big boulders in
Yeah.
there.
there's a lot of big boulders in there, yes.
Those, those. will-
Yeah, the boulders will stay, the boulder, can't move boulders, it's. On top of that, we also have a rat problem back there. And. Clearing some of this stuff out, I feel would help mitigate the rats, of course. We have a food problem. There's food being left out, so I don't know if it'll get rid of the rats, but hopefully by getting rid of the. Nesting area. They should help get rid of the rats.
What we need like food, who's eating food out?
The neighbor leaves food out For the
For the
birds and the cats and the
Oh,
rats
okay.
and the coyotes and
Yeah, bird feeders are enough.
The bird feeders, that's right, they were talking about
I had that building by my house a while back.
the old fashioned bird feeder with the big tray where the starlings will get there and shake them.
Yeah, well, then the seed, they put the seeds out on the ground and the rat can eat the seeds.
Yes, absolutely.
Sunflower seed.
But I mean, that's neither here nor there. I mean, that's not.
I will say, just as a side note, like, when the husband next door was cutting the grass here, a rat. I'm like, I just happened to be upstairs and I ran up towards whatever the main road is to Electric Boat, and I was like, the rat is in those piles. Like, there's no pictures of that one. I was just amazed to see it during the day running, like it was scared, wherever it was.
Oh, yeah, no, there's big piles and there's definitely the water source from the park lot. I mean, there's an environment for the rats, but there's also a food source, so at least if we can get rid of the environment, I can't seem to stop the food source. But at least I can mitigate the rats and mosquitoes that are back down in there, just being cleaned up. That's all I wanna do is just kind of clean it up. And make it maintainable, because otherwise, the brush just comes right back.
And she feels she's being injured because she's moving the wetlands or?
I don't know if she knows she's moved to wetlands. I just found that out on my report. They recently dumped all that sod back there in the spring when they cut steps into their hill and put it on my property.
So those are recent piles, those.
Absolutely, yeah,
Okay.
ma'am.
There are the logs aren't they're right on the line, half of them underneath that sod is on the
On their property.
property, and then the remainder's on.
Now. The other thing I wanna do is on top of maintaining the property, I'm also asking for permission to. Continue the privacy fence that I have already. On basically there's pictures of the wood fence in there. So I wanna continue that back to the corner of the property line, and then put a chain link fence. Adjoining my property and the neighbor's property, that little strip. Just like you. Yeah, it's like a 25-foot strip.
Strip in the back.
Yeah.
The purple line there.
Well, my presumption is. It's not a zoning issue.
It's a wetland.
We're only looking at it from the wetlands perspective, right? The zoning is regulations, he's okay with.
Yeah, the fencing's fine, as long as he puts it on his property.
Yeah, it's in there. 2 feet on my side, yes.
Yeah.
And. The fence post, like the fence they just put up, that's all hand dug, so there's not gonna be any equipment. That's all hand dug with an old fashioned pole hole digger and the big sledgehammer, so it's not like we're gonna be tearing up everything. The reason for the fence is, well, the illegal dumping and to keep the critters.
Okay. The consultant's report implied that she did not find any
The fence comes down, stops up here.
Any
He's here.
protected
The new fence right here.
vegetation.
He's already put it in.
Right, it's all,
Her view of the vegetation that you're talking about,
it's all like the.
mostly invasive species such as tree of heaven, bamboo, not with an Asiatic bittersweet.
Yes, that's pretty much.
With some natives such as the red maple and skunkite.
Yes, and that pretty much was back there, and the other thing I'd like to do is, if we do clear this out, to plant. Approximately 5 maples or something native, that belongs in this area. So that. A maple of some sort, just to kind of restore the canopy and.
So how will that be done without disturbing the wetlands? That's my question.
Well, my contractor, so the day that they got stopped, they're in there with loppers. They didn't even have a chainsaw. They're in there with loppers, so I assume they're gonna have a chainsaw, obviously, for the bigger trees. But he assured me that he was not gonna use heavy equipment to go back there and bulldoze or anything like that. The river lock would be kind of hand placed, maybe with a wheelbarrow. Like I assume they have to come in through my lot and dump a pile and then carry it in.
So the day that I went out there though, he had a mini excavator that was.
Yeah, the claw, the mini excavator, and then all he did was take the claw and grab the brush that he had cut down.
And that was before even GPS left,
Yeah,
it was
Yeah, I
like
mean, yeah,
before it
we-
even existed.
I didn't know this was wetlands.
no, I know, basically nobody did, I mean, even, so that's why, when we got. found out about it, I went out there to speak to you to say, listen, let's just hold up and
Yeah.
gather some information, make sure we're doing right by that.
Well, no, that excavator or whatever that mini thing was that had to call to pick up the brush. He stayed on the lawn in the yard and reached over and grabbed the brush and then drove back up to his truck, so. I'm imagining that they're not gonna drive down in there with that thing. But they can't because of big boulders anyways.
So the trees that are tagged to be removed,
Yes,
most of them are dead.
a lot of them are dead, a lot of them have the big holes like, yeah, a lot of them,
They're hollowed out,
they're hollowed out,
like,
a lot.
they still have leaves, but like there's one by the big grass pile.
On page 5, you can see a lot of like
It's
the rock.
all hollowed out. And then the two leaning the most towards the parking lot, one's completely like rowed out with woodpecker holes in this, like around.
So when I look at the picture on the bottom left of page 5,
Yeah, that's all rotted out, hollowed out, yep.
are you just circling the thin branches of that tree or the whole tree?
Well, we want the whole tree gone, but we were circling the damage.
The hollow, that's all where the hollows are.
Yeah, that's all the damage.
So the large trunk stays?
No, I mean, it would be cut down to a stump,
Oh,
because, I mean,
so that's all hollowed out.
yeah. And they're almost all like that are back there. There's one sumac tree, which that's an invasive tree, but there's one sumac tree that is actually still straight and standing and not rotted. But it's more on the edge towards the stone wall. The rest of it's all. We had that microburst in 2017 that came through. Remember that? They wiped pretty much out everything out there.
They took the tops off, so you'll see like some of them are.
So if I talk to you about what I envision as the general terrain of the area, so. Right?
Okay.
Is it sloping towards the Rainville parking lot?
My yard is sloping towards the Rainville parking lot. The Rainville parking lot is a little higher and there's a storm drain from the parking lot that goes into this low area.
So when I envision parallel to the EB fencing, there's some sort of depression
Yes, about approximately 2 to 3 feet.
that is where the water runs.
Yes,
And that's where you're going to remove some invasive species,
Mhm.
vegetation.
Mhm.
And replace it with this river rocks or small
yeah,
rocks.
small river rocks.
He's up to 4 inches, I think.
He said up to 4 inches and he described it. Verbally that they would space them, like it wouldn't be covered, it'd be like a thin layer so that. Stuff can still grow up through the rock and the water can still drain. But I'd be able to walk back there and weed whack and.
Okay.
So it's not like filling up like a pea stone patio or nothing like that. He described it as just loosely layered, one thin layer.
And then some of the trees like that are right along the fence, you'll see like are actually, some are holding up the fence.
Yes.
Leaning over.
On page 7.
These small trees?
Yeah, those, the sumacs.
Well, there's small sumacs and there's actually some good sized sumacs back there. But page 7.
Page 5.
Yeah.
So that's EB's fence and then page 5 does show a lot of like the smaller trees and along the fence. Page 7 shows how the trees are hanging over the parking lot, which I guess my fear is that eventually a branch is gonna come down and either hit a car or somebody.
They actually parked parallel against that fence.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and I spoke to them
Mhm.
and let them know that the fence is in need of some repair. So they're aware of it and they're gonna look into it,
Okay, yeah, because actually a lot of the trees are holding up the fence, so if you guys bring me permission to clear that. Yeah, the fence.
The fence is not a requirement, right? Town.
Well, it's a requirement for that parking lot, because.
You guys have something, right?
Well, because, yeah, there's shielding of the car lights and stuff.
Yeah.
Into the residential neighborhood. So they have to do something.
And this will be the water course right here.
Yeah, it runs along the back of that property. And this, like I said, is a pipe that comes from the parking lot that's piped over. And it comes into his property, that's where the water comes home.
And that's the wetland. It's the drainage from the parking.
It's the drainage from the
Yeah.
parking lot.
The wetland
So it's man-made, yes, that's.
contributes.
Yeah.
Contributes to the water.
Yeah,
But there'd be no wetland there if there was no parking lot and no drainage, right?
Well, if the soil was what they said, even though there's no water, would they consider the wetland?
I understand, but it's a little crazy in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, and she did state that in her report, that it was wet because of the, rain circling the parking lot.
But is it only wet when there's a rain and then it's usually dry, or is it
Yes.
always mucky and wet?
No, it's only wet, well, we had a lot of rain this spring, so it was wet when the contractor was there, but it's bone dry right now.
Gotcha.
So I want to clarify this, right? So we're gonna verify the wetlands, this boundary here decision
Mhm.
versus the green versus blue
Mhm.
for next move, right?
Yep.
The fencing that you want to put up has no zoning issues.
Nope.
And
What
And
about
it's, you know,
the
mostly-
materials that are being used?
There would be a wood fence, just like the one in the picture.
Yep.
Continuing down to the corner, and then chain link fence along the back.
But what's going down into the earth?
The post, and so the wood fence would be a wooden post.
Is it wood? Is it treated wood? Is it, I guess,
It's treated
treated with,
whatever they use, pressure treated. I think they changed that years ago, but they can't use the good stuff anymore.
yeah, there's an arsenic and it has copper injected. But it's, you know, I'm sure. it's wooden
environmentally
fence.
safe?
Yeah, and it's for ground contact is what, I'm sure what they got. Fence, did you have a fence company do it or?
I had, yes, Superior Fence did it,
Yeah,
and like I said, they hand dug the holes, so they. Won't have equipment, and actually, I was surprised that guy actually said it's easy to hand dig the hole because of rocks, so like the augers will get tied up in a rock and spin the guy around.
Yeah.
And the chain link fence would be galvanized, whatever the posts are for a chain link fence. And that's mostly to stop the illegal dumping on my property by the neighbor. And like I said, by cleaning up that sod, it would hopefully get rid of the rats.
So the problem here is that, I mean, this doesn't look like a big wetland to me. It looks like when it's rains, it's got a wetland. Other than that, it's not a
Yes,
issue. I don't understand how she's being harmed here. I mean, what is her?
you can ask her.
That's okay, Bill.
I have a statement to read when he's done.
well, all right. So now I'm gonna take control of this meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. This is the meeting for the applicant to submit a permit.
Mhm.
And it's solely for him to present to us and for us to agree that we have enough of the facts. And the story for that he has provided for information to accept the application. If there's a public concern with what he is doing, then. If you provide there's 3 ways that we will create another meeting that's a public hearing. It's not this meeting. So to be honest with you, Wendy, right, Wendy? I don't think we've met, we talked on the phone. I think,
Yeah,
right?
probably, yeah.
All right. So I'm not in a position to even recognize you at this meeting, okay?
Yeah.
For you to come back. We would have to create a public meeting, and one of the 3 ways could be if you have a petition that's signed by 25, 18-year-old or older city voters. That would make us schedule a public hearing in which we would open it up for the public to come in and present their facts for us to consider before we decide. Okay? Just,
But because I lost power and had to handwrite my letter to you tonight, can I present this to you tonight? I don't have to read it to you, just to give it to you.
well, you've already mailed us a package to each of our commissioners, right?
Right, I spoke to a lawyer and this is the result of that conversation.
Well, then I am gonna ask you to hold that for a public hearing.
Okay.
I do have a question, I guess I'm just kind of curious on. If you have a public hearing, and you have a petition, 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 what I proposed, I mean, as far as an environmental impact, do you guys feel that what I'm asking is gonna hurt the area? Of course, that's, you guys have to make that decision, I know, but I'm just kind of
I
curious.
mean,
Well, I do have a question about the stones
Mhm.
that you are proposing to put in, and, you know. Do we have any information about how that affects the life in the soil that would be underneath the stones? Because eventually, if it's wet back there, the stones are gonna sink and become incorporated into the wetlands, and, you know, Mother Nature's a powerful force, so. You know, the thought that you have a walking path. I can see that going away really fast. So I'm just wondering, you know, do we have data about the effect of that layer on the wetlands? And a very light layer, what does that mean?
Well, to answer your question, I don't have data on that,
Yeah.
but what the contractor told me is that a one layer of stone. That would be placed, and you're right, they would probably sink over time. And if that were the case, then we could forget the stone. I just want to be able to get back there and maintain it and keep the rat population down, and mosquitoes down, get rid of the dead trees. And, you know, have the privacy fence extended just because of some of the issues I've had with the illegal dumping.
Because part of our concern with your application.
Mhm.
What you're trying to do, although it can be considered a regulated maintenance, is in the wetlands. If it was 20 feet away, 80 feet away from the wetlands, it would be a lot easier for us to decide how you could defend and protect the wetlands.
Okay,
All right, the fact that you're in it makes it more sensitive for us to discuss.
absolutely, with the, and I get that, and I guess I'm looking at those dead trees as a safety factor.
Like, and I don't, I'm not arguing with you other than where they are.
Right, Well-
Do you leave, like, if trees are in a precarious state? Do you just let them, like, nature do it? Like, is that? Like, if it's a protected area,
So
and just.
can you have concern about the stone? Bill?
We do, just, you know, I am not familiar, we don't see very many, at least I've not seen very many applications in the wetlands. So I would need to in order to support it, I would need to educate myself about, you know, what can you do in the wetlands? Is it okay to dig a fence post? Will that affect things? If you put a layer of river stone down, will that maintain the wetlands or will it affect the wetlands? And if another layer went in, will that affect the wetlands? And, you know, just seeing what we surmise happened with the brush piles affecting the wetlands. I'm just wondering what the long-term effects would be, and I'd like to hear some data that would support, you know, either pro or con to that.
See, I'm sensitive to the statement he made that. Or that your contractor made that the wetlands move.
well, and now,
I mean,
yeah, and that's another question, so,
Because I don't have. Factual documentation that it was the wetlands to begin with. What the map showed. That GPS map that someone did of the whole city.
It's this itty bitty teeny tiny little
Yeah.
thing
That was circled with a dotted line, not even a solid line.
that goes all the way out to Rainville.
What page you on? Well, what's the process for determining whether something's a wetland or not?
That's what. His contractor came in, they're soil science specialists. So they analyze the soil and it's that analysis of the soil that determines whether it's a wetlands or not. And because she said it moved, my original question then, does that mean what was on that map to begin with, keeps deemed as not wetland?
And that's because of the solid that was dumped there.
I'm not gonna get into
Right,
cause of why
right,
it was or not.
That's what I
It is, it's what it isn't now. And if you tell me she went in there and did the soil things. And it's not the right soil mixture to be a wetlands, then we should have, we can't consider that a wetlands for this permit. We can only look at the circled area in blue that she identified.
Right.
Right. But I don't, that question needs to be answered.
Right, which is,
So, yeah, I got a couple ideas in my head. The first one is. I wanna organize a sidewalk
Absolutely, great,
to go look at it,
absolutely.
and. If that means, can you arrange for the contractor that's talking about those rocks to be there?
He is in Florida, St. Thomas, he works remotely, I think he said he'd be back in August. So if you guys wanna wait till August, I could definitely have him on the phone when you guys are there.
Or the person that works for him.
Oh, I could call the guy that worked for him and ask him if
That'd be
he
John.
If he can't physically be there, can he provide documentation?
I can ask him.
Right.
And I guess the other question I have,
Documentation regarding
The stone, his idea for the stones and the
of the
wood,
stone walkway.
yeah,
of what he actually envisions. I can ask him,
and. You're gonna be in contact with the consultant about the boundaries and whether she checked that green area.
yep,
but he didn't check the area that belongs to the neighbor, because she didn't go on their property.
Irregardless of whether the green area is a wetlands or not. We can manage the evaluation either way.
Mhm.
What I really wanna make sure is, as my council members here don't have any outstanding questions before. We say this application, we're not approving this application.
No, but I have one comment. I don't think the documentation for requesting from his guy is gonna answer Kim's question. She's looking for publications or something that show that you can put, little stones. Him saying, this is what I'm gonna do, or this, I'm gonna make a walkway, and that's not gonna help, right? That's gonna be a little more clear as to the documentation we're asking him to provide. Because otherwise we'll be back here and the documentation won't be suitable, right?
well,
I mean, it's the landscaper who's gonna tell you, you're gonna put rocks there. That's not me.
when you just reach out to your soil scientist. Do they know what you wanna do as far as?
Yeah, she told me, in fact, she,
I mean, you got a determination from her, if he gave her what he wants to do back there, explain it to her, and that let her write a. You know,
Assessment.
assessment of how that it would impact, would it be negative, would it be positive, would it be neutral? I think it would help for you to have somebody that's what they do for a living.
and she actually did say that a lot of that vegetation back there, that was invasive.
Yeah, I don't think the concern we have is with. You're removing vegetation. I have a little concern about the volume of trees you're moving and what I see flagged in that thing, which don't look dead to me in the.
No, they're not
Okay.
completely dead, but there are a lot of rotted, there's a lot of
You
invasive.
know, so that's why I'm saying I think we need to do a site walk.
Mhm.
And as long as there's a commitment that you're not gonna change the contour of the landscape. In other words, you're not gonna get out there and dig out the trough before you
No,
put
no,
the rocks,
no,
right? No, we're not gonna remove soil.
No, absolutely not. And if the rocks are contingent, I mean, we could skip the rocks. I guess the other question I have is if that wetland was moved. Now, where I want to put the fence is not wet according to her. According to our sources.
But. The other side of it is our regulations say you would have needed the permit for that stuff because you're within 200 feet of the well. And you're well within.
Oh, right there,
The
yes.
problem is. Whatever the history is of the fence you already put up. And the shed.
Mhm.
There should have been a wetland permit for those.
If we do
Whatever, I can't reinvent history, but.
No, I know, I understood, and like I said, it was very surprising to me to find out that that was considered wet.
And it's happened to, I tell people, I says, I'll never own property with wetland.
You know, the other thing, speaking of defensive permits.
Hmm?
The other thing is that there's been work done back there since this process has started. So if you look at page 8. You see my boundary tape where it's so overgrown on my side. It's been cleaned on the other side. And there's a privacy screen that was put there just a couple of weeks ago. So in this process, there's been work done back there.
That screen was put up because he has a camera facing my property,
Looking at the rats.
so we
Okay.
wanted some privacy as a temporary addition to that portion of the property.
So is the privacy fence gonna go over that stone wall?
I'm assuming that it's gonna get removed at some point.
Absolutely, but he's had that camera there for months.
I guess, look, I did not want to get into counseling neighbors, but.
No, we don't
Okay,
want to do that.
but the issue I got here is this, that privacy fence is on your property, right, Wendy?
That little screen, that's a plastic little screen that's being supported by 2 plant stakes, is on our property, yes.
Okay. So, actions. Soil, you're gonna contact soil scientist, for his soil scientist, I guess, for the definition of the wetland boundaries and that the area that was originally thought to be wetlands is not.
Mhm. Yeah.
You're gonna, you're gonna ask her for.
I'm sorry, Nick, just before I get to for the minute, so the soil scientist is gonna determine whether or not, and we believe that it's actually a fence that we're asking.
Well, she's identified the blue area as wetlands. We don't need her to reaffirm that, but the issue is. There was a section on that map that we had identified that's potentially wetlands. That she did not circle, and I need confirmation that she agrees that's not wetlands.
You did take the samples all the way back. You know, if you want all the way across my property to take samples.
Well, fine, okay, that's good. I'm hoping she said it's not a wetland. It'll make some of this, it'll make some of this a lot easier. Even though you are planning on, according to the yellow plan, you are planning on going through the blue wetland with that. Flowway, so we,
And on the wetlands map, there's a GPS wetland that goes around in a black line.
Yeah.
So we want to confirm from the soil scientist that she does not.
Yeah, I get it, just this one right there.
Yeah.
right,
Is this area passable? The little strip can that be tested?
right, it's Russian.
She did, it's all right, but she did get in there and she did test that. And if, you know,
You know, and we should dress accordingly if we're gonna go in there.
absolutely, there's mosquitoes, there's rats, absolutely,
Well, I just one pan.
absolutely. And
Spray.
if the rock is really, I mean, the rock's not important if you guys feel that it would damage the property, so I mean, that was just an idea the contractor had to think of.
I'm not against, I think it seems like a fine idea for. Being able to have some way of maintaining it without having to deal with dirt banks and stuff all the time.
I see.
Hmm?
I-
There's one more thing. Oh, who's contacting her about affirmation of the stone placement? That,
Well, that's up to him if he wants, because I don't want, I mean, he's hot, you know, he had to hire her, so. If she has to do any more work, obviously, she's gonna want some kind of compensation for her time. So he has to decide who wants to give that information as far as, you know, what kind of rock and the placement of it, and then the determination of what that would do to the wetland. Right, I mean, I just can't ask for that and ask her to figure that out and send it in, I mean,